I created this little mental model in my head that I called the SEO pyramid. And it was like basically a pyramid. And at the top was like, basically wide is volume and up and down the pyramid is intent. And at the top of the pyramid, you have your brand terms, right? And that's like,
welcome to SEO Unveiled. Today I've got a wonderful guest. I got Aaron Beashel with us. He's the founder of Attributor. Prior to that, he led marketing teams at B2B SaaS companies like InVision and Campaign Monitor. I mean, he's got some amazing big company marketing experience, and he's got a really cool take on attribution that I think everybody here is going to be super interested in. When he isn't working, you'll find him sliding down waves or snow-covered mountains. He comes from Sydney, Australia, and I'm really excited because I love Australia. And I'm really excited to have him here on SEO Unveiled. Thanks, Aaron, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, one thing I always like to understand is like, how did people get into the industry? And like, why did you get into marketing in the first place?
Yeah, it's sort of a little bit of a twisted tale, I suppose. If I was to go back a long, long way, to my high school days, I always had an interest in marketing. I was like probably the only high school student that subscribed to Adweek. I just always sort of loved advertising and just like the cleverness of it and stuff like that. And then, I actually wanted to get into event management because I wanted to, as 18-year-olds do, I wanted to organize music festivals. So I, went to uni and did event management. And then ultimately ended up just sort of, co-founding a SaaS company. And then, sort of marketing was part of my remit there, and then just fell in love with it and have kind of been here ever since. So I would say it was more of a happy accident than it was a deliberate life choice, but it worked out for the best.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely different from like trying to do event management for like, big concerts and venues and stuff like that to B2B SaaS, kind of demand generation stuff. But I feel like I
would have been like so bad at it as well. Like I look back at that life, like I'm just not an organized person who can have 20 different things be on the go at once. So pretty happy that that didn't work out.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you got a bunch of spinning plates on your, in your day-to-day anyway, to keep you busy enough and to force you to be a little organized. But, one thing I just really kind of want to understand from you and get your perspective is, what trends in general are you noticing in marketing or search that you're just really excited about?
Yeah, I think the thing that comes to mind for me, and again, all my perspective is in B2B sort of SaaS stuff, but the companies that have made it really big off the back of SEO within B2B SaaS, like Zapier, Canva are probably two great examples. And it was all just like super long tail programmatic type content. Like if you think of Zapier's strategy, which is pretty well known, like it's just a whole bunch of programmatic pages that they've created that rank, integrate Salesforce with Gravity Forms, or, they've even got pages now for each individual Zap. So it's like send leads from here to the Salesforce lead object or something like that. And it's all just like, it's all long tail stuff. Like if you went and put that into, Ahrefs or SEMrush or something like that, you're going to get like, it's all just going to say zero results, like, zero keyword volume, but Zapier is, a multi-billion-dollar company now. And I think that's really exciting, right? Because you can actually, if you've got the right product that lends itself to this kind of approach, you can actually build a really big, really great company from the get-go without having, a DA of 95 or this huge authority, because these long tail keywords are a lot less competitive kind of thing. So I think, that's sort of an exciting opportunity that I think, I see sort of becoming more and more prevalent within the B2B SaaS world.
I mean, I think that's a really good example of, how are you creating valuable content? Because, a lot of people talk about creating these long, big pieces of content from an expert user, and that might work in a lot of industries, but B2B SaaS is different. And I mean, we operate for a B2B SaaS company. I think you're a B2B SaaS company too. And so like, I kind of live this every single day of, well, what kind of content is the right kind of things to resonate with users? And the example you're talking about of, hey, this is how we solve problem X, but this integration to this integration, this is Zap, this is how you would do it. So it's a real solution-oriented way, which really kind of sounds to me like a really smart, resonant idea. And then the question I have is like, how do you actually do that for the companies? Like, how do you implement that when the solution isn't so clear, isn't so easy? And I mean, that's whoever thought of that, super smart person. And I'm like, well, what part of that is gonna apply to other B2Bs that may not have something like that? Maybe they have one product.
Yeah. It is an interesting one. You can be like, there are certain products that lend themselves to that kind of strategy and some that don't, right? But I think there are, there are opportunities, I guess, up and down. Like I having done SEO for a long time, I created this little mental model in my head that I called the SEO pyramid. And it was like basically a pyramid. And at the top was like, basically wide is volume and up and down the pyramid is intent. And at the top of the pyramid, you have your brand terms, right? And that's like, that's the absolute top of intent, but there's usually not that much volume. And then as you come down, you've got solution terms, which is like, integration software or point of sale software. And then you've got problem terms, which for Zapier was like integrate Salesforce with blah or whatever. And then you go down and you've got, competitor terms. So your competitors, and then like what I call integration terms. So like point of sale software for Xero or point of sale software for QuickBooks and so on and so forth. And so I think for those that don't have, a lot of solution type terms, like maybe you've got a newish product that doesn't have an established category, it's often just the case that if you move down the rungs, you can tend to find some other things. Or even the case of, even if there is a lot in that solution category, maybe it's super competitive and you're a new company and you're not going to find those. So like as an example, I did a bunch of work for a company called Quilla, which makes proposal software. But the biggest SEO opportunity, and proposal software is a relatively established catergory, and had a reasonable amount of search volume and stuff. But the biggest opportunity was actually in what I would call the problem terms, with people searching for proposal templates. So marketing proposal template, sales proposal template, gardening proposal template, so on and so forth. And so we were able to build a whole bunch of templates, put them out there. And, majority of the acquisition for that company actually came off of those templates, even though they ranked like 2 or 3 for proposal software. Just the pure volume was within the templates in those problem terms. And they converted worse because, people don't actually have purchase intent. They just want a template. But the sheer volume of them actually made it, and the fact that it was largely for free, the traffic actually made it a very, very worthwhile exercise and was their main driver of growth for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting take of like, okay, well, you just got to figure out more and more about the problem and what people are, what people's kind of thoughts about something around what you're offering and build out from there. And you can find one space where you found templates, right? So templates, not necessarily the first thing you think of when you think of like giving away free stuff to people. But maybe it makes a lot of sense to start to build up brand awareness and to build up users knowing who you are and then come back to you over time. Maybe enter an email to get the template, and then you have them on your email list and you can send them a nice long drip campaign. That.
And if you can segue into your product as well, like, Quilla, it was sort of a case of like, here's a template. Do you want to use, you can download it as a PDF if you want to, or a Word document or whatever and go do it that way. Or you can sort of load this in our product and, then you can edit it in our product and then you can send it as a beautiful web page rather than a crappy PDF. And I think if you can have that segue into your product, that's sort of the key thing, because that's where you're actually going to get a lot of signups and a lot of people into your product, as opposed to give away the template and then just start hitting them with emails, which can be good, but it's probably not as good as being able to segue people straight into your product.
For sure. So I'll give you kind of the easy tactic, and you layer on, hey, here's how you think more about product. And I'm like, man, I thought I was a product manager. That's a really good, that's a good fresh take. I love it. Man. So, I feel like you've stayed ahead of the curve on a lot of these things. Like how do you stay ahead of the curve on all the changes that go on in search and kind of growth marketing and like, what are you doing to find out about some of these things? It seems like you've really got your pulse really, really well dialed in.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a combination of things, right? Like it's like probably like everyone, it's, following some people on Twitter and you come across them that way. I'm still kicking it old school with RSS feeds. I still have Feedly on my iPad and subscribe to a bunch of things that way and stuff like that. So I'd say it's probably just setting up the right systems, I suppose, like whether it's following the right people on Twitter, having RSS feeds or something like that to make the content essentially come to you. I think has been really key to me, because I wouldn't actively, I don't block off time in my day to be like, I'm going to go and spend an hour trying to read a whole bunch of stuff. But if you have it coming to you and, you're just playing around on your phone at the nighttime and you can sort of pick those things up. The other thing that I've actually read a bunch of lately, which has been super interesting, and I think they do a really good job, is, those just like those stories that come up on the Chrome homepage on your phone. That's like, the suggested for you stories or something like that. I think that they've been doing a really good job lately. I've definitely got some stuff off there that I was like, hey, this is
they figured you out.
Yeah. Turns out that Google company is pretty good at knowing me. So
yeah, but you got to dial it in first. You got to be already looking at all that stuff. So I feel like you've primed it. Yeah, you've primed it really well. That's interesting. Are there a couple? For sure. Are there a couple good feeds or people or blogs or publications that you think would be helpful for everybody to follow, no matter who they are?
I think that the number one person that comes to mind is a guy called Kevin Indig. He was formerly at G2 or G2 Crowd, which then became G2, and I'm pretty sure he's the head of SEO over at Shopify now. He's got an interesting newsletter. He does a lot of his own sort of independent analysis. He's probably the number one person that comes to mind.
Kevin is amazing. So Kevin, he's got a great take. If I agree with you, I get his newsletter. He has probably one of the best insights on search that I've ever talked to. So I 100% agree with you.
The problem for me is now that he's over at Shopify, he's super focused on e-commerce, and I just as a person in B2B SaaS, I'm like, this isn't as relevant to me. So I'm a little upset that he works at Shopify now, but some of his other stuff is pretty good.
Yeah. He's a great guy too. So good shout out to Kevin Indig. I'm sure he'll love that. Cool. So, the other thing that I kind of wonder is you worked at a bunch of kind of, pretty well-known B2B SaaS companies like InVision and Campaign Monitor, and, you're a founder of Attributor. How are you getting these kind of, this kind of information, these kind of thoughts, disseminated through the team? And how do you kind of integrate this thinking so that you've got other people on the team thinking through things like you do and implementing things like you would?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I've been sort of fortunate in the past that, I've never been a dedicated SEO person. I've always had a bit of a broader remit that might be I was the head of marketing at InVision for that case. So, I kind of had control over all of it. And then, I was the head of demand generation at Campaign Monitor for a while as well. So I sort of benefited from the fact that I wasn't a dedicated SEO person and I had to fight for SEO. I kind of owned the overall demand gen sort of strategy and I could decide there. But I think for me, in times where I've had to fight for SEO budget with CEOs or something like that, one particular case comes to mind where I basically just went out and there was the Quilla example where I sort of figured out there's this huge templates sort of opportunity. And I basically just took all the keyword research that was out there on all the different templates we could potentially rank for, and then just basically backed it all the way through to revenue. So I was like, okay, so if there are, I think there was 400,000 or 500,000 searches per month across all of these different templates. And then I just sort of basically did 3 or 4 different models. It was if we can pick up 5%, 10%, or 15% of traffic, this is what it would look like. And it was okay, that leads you to this many visits, and then our rough conversion rate is X. So therefore, it would be this many signups, this many customers, this much revenue. And by being able to basically show the revenue impact, you make it much more quantifiable for people like CEOs and stuff like that, or CMOs if you're reporting to them, who are trying to choose between spending money on SEO or spending money on ads or spending money in various other ways. So yeah, I think pushing it all the way through to revenue and being able to model that the whole way through is probably the biggest piece of advice I'd give in that area.
Yeah, it definitely takes a certain kind of perspective to step back and say, okay, here's something that I think we should do. And the reason why I think we should do it is because it actually adds up and makes sense on the bottom line for the company. Because, a lot of people in search or growth marketing are just they're focused a lot on traffic. Sure, they might be focused intent as well, trying to convert users, but it's generating that traffic is also still a vanity metric of I just want more traffic and get traffic quickly. And so really trying to think about, well, we're starting to do something new, and here's a plus and minus. I love your 5% versus 15%, like good, better, best scenario, or middle ground. If it doesn't do as well, if it does really well, just so you can get some variability, because we don't really know what's going to happen with any of these things, right? It's like it's really up to the Google to determine really where we are. We're just trying to make things work, and so I feel like that variability is makes it more. It actually feels to me like if you're coming to me and like, Clay, hey, I've got this initiative. It could be like a $500,000 initiative or a $1.2 million initiative as far as revenue, somewhere in between there. Then I'm like, well, I like that it's got a range, and I like
it kind of adds credibility, right? Like,
because if someone says this
is like $700,000, you'd be like, really? How do you know that? Like,
and then I just ask you about all your assumptions, right? And then it becomes it doesn't become fun for you, right? Instead, you kind of want to think, look, it's 500,000 to whatever $1.5 million, and my major assumptions were this and this. And so there's variability. I don't really know. And we have to, we have to implement it well. And it's going to take some A/B testing to get there. But, I think it'll take this much effort to get there. And, typically the effort of something like that, it just depends on what it is. But, it's effort versus kind of bottom line revenue, I think, or versus other projects. So I like that.
And that's what it comes down to. Like that CEO being able to say, okay, we think this is going to get this return. It's going to take this much effort. And we think this other thing's going to get that much return and this much effort. And it's ultimately just a ratio of those things and which one is better.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is sometimes it's really hard to model that stuff out. I'm very used to modeling things out in my whole career because before I was solely focused on SEO, I did a lot of product management work. And so it's all about prioritization. It's all about is this going to be better off for us than that? And there's a lot of times where there's a few things that are just get prioritized just because, maybe it's for the good of the team because everybody on the team wants to do it, and it's a small lift, and it's not going to have a big impact, but all your devs really want to do it, and you're like, let's just gotta keep the devs happy,
too, right? Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, one thing that I keep on wondering is attribution. In search, sometimes you really don't know where people are coming from that are converting and things like that. Like, I really want to get your insight on how are you attributing sales or how are you attributing conversions? Like, how does that work for you? And just kind of want to dial in on your immense knowledge in the attribution realm.
Yeah. So look, I think, and this is sort of where the inspiration from my current company kind of came from, was that it's really easy for anybody to go and basically put Google Analytics on a website, and then you can see here's how many people you got from organic search and how many got from paid search and so on and so forth. But as you said, you kind of alluded to before, visitors is to a large extent a vanity metric. Like if you're actually measuring that in itself, visitors actually cost you money in terms of hosting fees and all of that kind of stuff. It's actually a largely irrelevant metric unless you directly monetize them by selling ads or something like that. But for most B2B companies or anybody that sells something, it's really not the main end goal there. So I was sort of I was doing this consulting for these various different companies, and what I kept seeing was that they had Google Analytics, and I could come in and I could be like, okay, cool. So you get 1,000 visits here and 2,000 visits there. But then their back end systems, their CRMs, if it was a business that sold a product through a salesperson, or the mix panels and the amplitudes and stuff of the world, if it was a business that was more sort of self-service, they never had any of that channel attribution data in it. So it was really easy for me to see where the visits were coming from. But anything after that, I was kind of just like, this is crazy. And then so I went looking for a bunch of different tools, but they were all super focused on capturing UTM parameters. And so it's the people out there in the world who are doing Google Ads and stuff, they've kind of got a solution for this, because you can, even most of the form builders, Gravity Forms and all those kind of tools, they have the ability to capture UTM parameters. But if you're focused on SEO or any of the organic channels, there was literally no way that I could come up with, at least not in a reasonable way that wasn't, $150,000 product, to actually just send through data from the website through to the CRM or to the backend tools that said, hey, this person came from organic search.
Sure.
So that was basically what I needed, right? Like all the businesses I was working for, yeah, they were doing Google ads and Facebook ads, but that only accounted for 10, 20, 30% tops of the customers or the signups and the customers or the leads and whatnot. And so I was like, great, like I can use these UTM tools, but I'm missing 70% of the info of my leads here. So that's sort of where Attributor came about, where I was like, okay, basically what I need this product to do is essentially take the Google Analytics style channels, you know, the fact that this person came from organic search or paid search or referral or direct or all of the channels that you see in GA, and pass that information into the CRM. So then I can run reports in the CRM and see, okay, well, we got this many leads from organic search and this many customers from organic search, and those customers paid us, you know, $100,000 in revenue, and so therefore we're generating, you know, 100K in revenue. And so that was ultimately that's ultimately what I think, you know, SEOs need to be doing, right? Is, you know, coming back to that modeling that we talked about before. You know, you're going out, if you're doing this model and you're going out there and saying, I think we can get $700,000 in revenue each month from these SEO efforts, but then all you can track is the number of visitors, like your argument's going to fall apart at some point in time, and the CMO or the CEO is going to turn away and go, okay, that's great, congratulations, you increased visitors by 3,000, but like, you know, we have no quantifiable way to say that increased revenue. So I think for me, I think the attribution side of organic search, again, it depends what the business model is of the organization. But in B2B SaaS, there's really two go-to-market models, I suppose. One is you generate a lead, the lead goes into the CRM, a salesperson calls them, they do a demo, close a deal, or it's self-serve, where it's like, you know, sign up, use the product a little bit, like it, pay for it kind of thing. And either of those models, you need to be tracking, and the tools are different and whatnot, but you need to be tracking the impact of your SEO efforts all the way through to the number of customers and revenue in order to really understand what's going on and what's working and what isn't.
So, I mean, one thing that I'm wondering when you're talking about that, you know, you talk about the two B2B SaaS models, and it's very interesting to me because I feel like there's always a controversy, or maybe not controversial, but it's always a hard decision for B2B SaaS companies to make is, do they go the free trial route or do they go the sales demo route, right? And so maybe, do you have an insight on like which one kind of works for which situations?
So I think I would just sort of change that question slightly and say the self-service model, which includes both freemium and free trial, and then the inside sales model. There's a guy called Brian Balfour who used to be the VP of growth at HubSpot. He now runs his own company called Reforge. He has a great model on this. It's called the 4 fits of $1 billion company or $100 million company or something of a big company. And it's essentially like the idea is that basically your go-to-market sort of needs to have these four fits. One is product market fit. One is like market channel fit. The other one is like price market fit, and sort of like these 4 quadrants, and then they all crisscross it, generally speaking. And then the idea is like product channel fit. And generally the idea is like, you know, you can't sell NetSuite on a self-serve model, right? Like it costs $50,000 or $100,000. It's not bought. The way it's purchased is not bottoms up. Like someone doesn't just go sign up for NetSuite and like it, and then other people start using NetSuite in the organization. Like it's purchased top down. It's purchased by the head of like the CFO or something like that, and then basically forced on everybody else. It's a really, really complicated product to understand and to get set up. Like you don't just sort of go in there. It's not like Trello where you go in and you're like, oh, okay, cool. This is how Trello works. Like you need to spend probably hundreds of hours. I mean, I've never implemented NetSuite, but you need to spend probably hundreds of hours learning the program, implementing all of your stuff in it, so on and so forth. And so therefore, NetSuite can't run on a self-serve model. And so therefore, certain channels aren't necessarily like relevant to NetSuite because they're not after high volume $19 deals that, you know, they can these huge deals. So I think the decision of which way to go, self-serve or inside sales, largely comes down to the product and the target market and your available channels and your price point and all of those things. Because ultimately, it's like, is this thing something that can self-serve? You know, and what's it cost? Is it something that, you know, if you had a salesperson selling it for $19 a month, you're actually just going to lose money on every single sale? So I don't think there's necessarily a specific answer. I think it's just about like your fit, a fit of your combination of your price, the target market, your product complexity, all of those things really determine whether you go a self-serve or an inside sales type path.
But I mean, I feel like it's super important, and it's, typically outside the realm of most SEOs. But if you think about it, if you're a person focused on converting traffic via search, right? And you're trying to get all these people into your product, but maybe the person that decided the pricing kind of fit, is it is it inside sales, or is it, free trial? Maybe they made the incorrect decision. Maybe the product's too complicated, even though the price is maybe, in that middle zone of maybe a couple $100 a month might be that middle zone. I don't know what the middle zone is, but, and so the person inside, or even an agency, is tasked with reaching a goal that is never going to get them what they would get is if they switch to the different kind of other model. So I almost feel like this is a really good conversation to have, because if you're going after a goal and it's kind of a little bit, the strategy that's been made for some of the other parts that inhibit the goal are working against you, it might be worth branching outside of your day-to-day silo of, creating content, or doing this for search, to say, well, wait, is my traffic going to convert? Is this going to be helpful for getting a new user to buy the product? And is it part of the process of buying the product messed up? Can I talk to the PM, or can I talk to the head of engineering of, like, does this make sense, or the head of marketing, and try to level up the efforts so that the strategy actually works overall. So I definitely love that insight, because I feel like it's, this comes up all the time in this, like, $200 to $500 a month kind of products. Should they be inside sales? Should they be free trials? Do you do both? How do you segment users? All these kinds of things. Like, you might have a free trial on a real bare bones version. Is that helpful? Is that worse? Does that take some of your enterprisey kind of clients, puts them in a bare bones product that's not good for them? Like, there's all these questions that kind of rise up in my mind. But maybe I'm just
no, and it's true. Like, there's some other, like, you can also change. Like, you came from the perspective of conversion is signing up for the product, right? And then like, there might be some cases where SEO just isn't a good channel. There isn't a good channel product fit there. Another way that you can reframe it is changing the conversion actually the better idea? Because if you've got more of an enterprise level product, maybe you can use SEO to get another form of conversion that isn't signing up for the product. So, like, as an example, there's a company I do a bunch of little consulting work for called UTM.io. It's basically like a UTM parameter management tool. And, they mostly hang out in the enterprise, right? Because, they're companies that have, got 100 people using UTM parameters, and they need to standardize the use case and so on and so forth. And again, that's very enterprise, doesn't necessarily lend itself that well to SEO. But what does lend itself really well is they've got their own competes with, GA's campaign builder and all of that kind of stuff. And so their conversion is like getting people to use that, or getting people to use their simple Chrome extension or something like that, which is much more high volume. And then a portion of those people that you collect as leads can then flow up into the enterprise. So,
and you can
I
limit
agree with your point in that,
yeah, and you can limit the extension.
Yes, exactly. The channel like product and SEO don't always fit. And sometimes it might be that you change the SEO strategy to target different keywords, or maybe SEO just isn't the right channel for you. But sometimes it can be that you actually change the conversion goal. And as you said, you can then limit that free trial thing and so on and so forth to then push people up into the higher plans.
Yeah, I feel like your background of kind of overseeing and having kind of like a broader viewpoint of how to actually build up, marketing is really helpful, because when let's say you're just a content writer for SEO, and you don't typically think through, like, how, what kind of conversion is this kind of user going to be into, right? Like, you could be writing content that's, with a strategy that makes sense for the company to build up demand, build up traffic, but that kind of the traffic that you're building might be for the very low value kind of customers, versus some of those higher level ones where you talk about, like, hey, the UTM parameters, if you got 100 different people in the company coming with UTM parameters, that's a different different problem. And that one probably is a much lower volume keyword, but it also might be a much higher value customer. And so figuring out the kind of profiles of what is the best kind of customer and how to actually reach them to the problems that they're doing day to day is really interesting. And I really like your examples. They're really making my head think about a lot of things, which I think is super, super inspiring to me. So I think, to start wrapping it up, like I always want to ask people, what should everyone in our space stop doing? Like, what are they doing that just like flat out, like, stop doing that? That doesn't make sense.
I don't know if I have any good answers beyond the generic, stop creating content for search engines and all of that kind of stuff. I would think probably to just give something that's a little bit better than generic answers, I would say, like, stop creating content that drives visitors and start thinking about it all the way through to the end of the funnel. And like the example that comes to mind was when I was running content or demand gen / content at Campaign Monitor. I was friends with a couple of people over at Buffer, right? And everyone knows Buffer, the social media sharing app and whatnot. Then their blog was huge, and it still is. Like, I think they were getting 1 million visits per month to their blog. And they were writing like all sorts of stuff about like, productivity tips and, Google Chrome hacks and all of this kind of stuff. But like talking to them and just like understanding how it performs for them, we were doing 100,000 visits to our blog on a Campaign Monitor, which was on email marketing. And we were doing more signups and more customers through our blog than Buffer was, even though they had 10 times more traffic. And so I think, like, for me, like the advice would be is like, stop creating content that isn't necessarily going to attract people that are going to go and convert and turn into your product. And I think the only time, like, I kind of think about it as like a reverse ladder, right? It's like, all your content creation stuff should be focused initially on the bottom of funnel stuff. And only once you've tapped that out, do you start to move up the rungs, because you ultimately, as you go up those rungs and you start creating tips on, life hacks and productivity, and you make a social media sharing app, you're going to get a ton of visitors, but ultimately those visitors are going to cost you money because it's server costs, it's hosting costs, it's all of that kind of stuff. And if none of them are converting into actual users and signups of your product, what's the point?
Well, just pads AWS's bottom line. So
yeah.
or if you're like me, you got the Amazon credit card because your AWS bill is so high that you want to get the 5% back to buy groceries every month on Whole Foods. So, hey, I definitely don't mind more Whole Foods, gift cards, but that's for another day. So, I mean, I definitely want to turn it over to you and give you some time to talk a little bit about what you're working on today and how people should get in touch with you if they're interested in following up, and a little bit more maybe about Attributor.
Sure. So, well, firstly, thank you. But look, I kind of touched on it before. I think Attributor is basically a way to send marketing attribution information. So, the stuff you see in Google Analytics about paid people coming from organic search and so on and so forth into your CRM, so that you can ultimately report on, like which channels are working and which not. From an SEO perspective, it also sends in landing page and landing page group. So you can actually understand, like, and landing page group is just derived from the subfolder. So if the landing page is, attributor.io/blog, then it would be blog. And so what it allows you to do is it also, apart from being able to see, like, this is how many people we got from organic search, it allows you to actually see, okay, this is how many leads and customers we got from the blog or from the templates section or from the features section or whatever else it may be, as well as then drilling down into how many leads and customers and how much revenue we got from like individual blog posts and stuff like that.
Sure.
So yeah, it's just a way to be able to track things all the way through to customers and revenue, as opposed to just visitors.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really intriguing. Figuring out which landing page or landing page group people come to. I mean, I feel it's kind of smart of a folder-oriented way to figure out where things are coming from. And what's the website URL?
It's just attributor.io. You can go on there, sign up for a free trial, all that self-service type stuff we just talked about before. That's how it works. So yeah, if you're interested, if that sounds like it can solve a problem for you, then head on over there and check it out.
Sweet. Well, thanks so much for showing up on SEO Unveiled. I think everybody's going to love this episode. Really appreciate the time with you, Aaron Beashel. Thanks so much.
Cheers, everyone.